I'd like to call this July 10th Rules Committee meeting to order. Melvina, would you do the invocation, please?
Edorda galante helchele heliga handes geatinho, neumna dejdosta heldido hest, newiskeon hido hest to yukta, get hanna oswatli loha ajalegiskaduk. Father, again, we thank you this morning for bringing us back together. We just thank you for all the things that you have blessed us with. We just ask you give us wisdom and knowledge for the betterment of Cherokee Nation. Be with each and every one throughout this day. Again, we thank you in your name. Amen.
Amen. Shelley, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Joe Deere. Keith Austin. Here. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Here. Sean Crittenden. Here. Mike Dobbins. Here. Rex Jordan. Here. Johnny Kidwell. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Wes Snowfire. Dora Petzkowski. Here. Joshua Sam. Here. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Here. Candace Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
If you've had a chance to look at the minutes, could I have a motion, please?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. First up on reports from the Marshal Service, Marshal Shannon Buell.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry I wasn't here last month. I was out of state. Besides the normal monthly rules packet, one of the things I want to highlight is we had a couple of officers attend the Internet Crimes Against Children meetings that we're having in Oklahoma. That's one of the priorities that we're looking at, is see if we can't help agencies combat that serious issue we have. We also escorted Simeon Gibson. He's an older bike rider that was going to the Elder Olympics, and we escorted him from here. He rode his bike from here to Pennsylvania to be in the bicycle race. I think, I don't want to lie to you, but I think he's done that now for like 20 or 30 years, this race. And his family this time couldn't escort him from here to St. Louis, so he asked us to. Mike Rogers, our Special Operations team medic, escorted him, followed just like we do the Cherokee bike riders every year, up to St. Louis, where his family met him, and then they took him on in Pennsylvania. So that was kind of a neat deal that we got to help an elder kind of fulfill his dream of representing the tribe at the Elder Special Olympics. Kind of a neat thing. In June, we had approximately 114 prisoners housed in Texas at LaSalle. Other than that, if there's any questions you have for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But we did have 3 officers graduate FLETC Friday before last. 1 deputy marshal and then 2 special officers. That's ones that work in the court, juvenile justice, adult justice, those things that aren't marshals, but they're police officers and the like. So the marshal that graduated was a high shooter, did a lot of other outstanding things while he was at FLETC, so we're very proud of him. He came back. He's starting his FTO, which is the field training portion of his stuff. That'll last approximately 3 months, and then he'll be out working for us every day. So we're excited about getting new people. Another one is starting on the 24th. He's an already certified officer, so he'll start his FTO as soon as we get his uniform, get him on the street. So we have more marshals on the street. I've had comments from community that they're I hate to say it, they're finally seeing marshals in the community, and I'm glad of that. We're getting the numbers to where we can start having people out in our communities doing the good for the tribe. So if there's any questions, I'm here for you.
Anybody have any questions for Marshal Buell? Just a quick comment. Yeah, I've heard those comments too, and you know, EO brought up last time about people saying that, hey, you know, we're starting to see marshals everywhere. That's a big deal. I mean, you know, this is something we haven't been able to do, and that's probably one of the biggest deals you guys are going to do to get a good rapport with our Cherokee citizens, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Office of the Attorney General, Sarah Hill.
Good morning.
Morning.
Now, it's unusual that I would have, my last report, I was able to bring you really good news on the Brackeen case, and I am back again with more good news on the Hooper case in the city of Tulsa. So in late June, I think it was June 28th, we got our decision in the Hooper case. And you may remember me talking to you, it went through the district court and up to the 10th Circuit over the Curtis Act. And there, the city of Tulsa and several other cities in our reservation and in other reservations in eastern Oklahoma were arguing that a provision of the Curtis Act gave them jurisdiction over Indians in the city limits so that they could exert jurisdiction over Indians, even though the state lacked jurisdiction, that somehow the cities had jurisdiction because of the Curtis Act. And it was all under, the total legal argument was under Section 14 of the Curtis Act in front of the 10th Circuit. At the lower court, at the district court, the district court judge decided that the city did have jurisdiction, but that was completely reversed by the 10th Circuit. They looked at the law and took the viewpoint that was espoused by the defendant in this case, or not the defendant, but the person bringing the appeal here. In this case, it was a Choctaw citizen named Justin Hooper who'd received a moving violation in the city of Tulsa. He lived in the Creek Nation Reservation, and he had gone to the court arguing, "Court, we need you to clarify for the city that they lack jurisdiction over me, and I am at basically constant threat of the illegal jurisdiction of the city of Tulsa until you clarify the law on this for them." And then as an amicus, all of the 5 tribes plus the Quapaw Nation came into the case, and we filed an amicus brief in that case. And then it was argued in front of the 10th Circuit, and the 10th Circuit oral argument was done by Rios Kanji on behalf of all of the tribes, and Rios did an excellent job in oral argument. And all of the briefs that were filed by the amicus tribes, there were 2 different amicus briefs that were filed by the tribes that basically argued the law from our point of view. And so we were very pleased to see that basically the 10th Circuit agreed completely and said, no, the provisions of the Curtis Act that they are looking at, those basically had no effect since Oklahoma became a state. When Oklahoma became a state, the cities lost any powers they had under the Curtis Act. They became creatures of state law, as cities are, and there was no longer any powers under the Curtis Act that belonged to the cities after Oklahoma became a state. And so they lacked jurisdiction to bring their case against Indians. So that was a great decision by the 10th. Of course, it's a very long decision. It goes into the history of it. I'm giving you the top view of it. But if you're interested in the history, or if you're interested in this particular argument, the decision of the 10th Circuit was excellent. It was very well explained. It really went into the history of the case and why some of the arguments that the city of Tulsa was making were really missing the mark. Tulsa's argument was that the Curtis Act had never been repealed. And of course, the argument from the tribes and from Mr. Hooper were, it doesn't matter if it was repealed. What matters is that it ceased to have effect when Oklahoma became a state. And so that was part of the argument that was made in that case. So we're very pleased about the decision of the 10th Circuit. I believe it's correct on the law. I think anyone who reads that is going to be persuaded that, maybe that was the superior view of the law all the time, which we had always believed that it was. That does not mean that this is over. I'm sure that many of you saw in the immediate aftermath of that, Mayor Bynum from the city of Tulsa has already said that they will seek cert. There's only one court to go to if you lose a case at the 10th Circuit, and that's the U.S. Supreme Court. It's just a very disappointing decision to me that he would go to the Supreme Court over this. I think that, to me, which I've continued to say for some time, there's different ways to work these issues out, and we've seen that. It's not most cities in the Cherokee Nation are not Curtis Act cities. Most cities in the Cherokee Nation have been contacting us and working with us since the day McGirt was decided. Many of them, 23 of them, and I think we just picked up Verdigris, so I think maybe now we're at 24. 24 of them have signed agreements with us to work more directly with the tribe so they could retain some of the fine money that's collected directly in the cities. So there are lots of other options available for cities who, instead of wanting to continue litigation, would prefer to sit down and work with the tribes. And, until that cert petition is filed, I'm going to continue to hold out hope that cooler heads might prevail, and maybe we can find a different way to solve any issues that may arise. And we continue to meet with law enforcement, as we always do, and on our reservation. If there are issues that come up, we're happy to sit down and talk to our law enforcement folks about those issues and how we can work them out. So we remain committed to meeting with folks and trying to resolve those issues. So We'll see. There's another case that's in the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, the Stitt case. It's the brother of the current governor of the state of Oklahoma, has made a similar argument that Mr. Hooper made, that the city lacked jurisdiction over him because of this, the Curtis Act, that they lack. He's arguing on behalf of, on the tribal side on that the city lacks jurisdiction over him. And so we'll see what the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals might do with that in the wake of this decision by the 10th Circuit. So there are still issues involving the Curtis Act that are arising, and we'll continue to be vigilant and work on those. But I can't help but be very relieved to see the 10th Circuit just completely knock it out of the park. It was the 3-judge panelists who heard it. All 3 judges agreed on it. There were 2 Trump appointees and 1 Obama appointee heard the case. And I mean, there was just no dispute about what the outcome of the case should be between those 3 judges. So that's my update, and probably the most critical update for you. If questions come up about, and I heard a little bit of this, and you saw some of it, some in the reporting. I saw a picture posted that had a different speed limit. The speed limit on the interstate was 85, and then underneath that it said tribal speed limit 100. And I had reassured people who had asked me, and in fact, you do have to obey the speed limit. That we do have a speed limit law in the Cherokee Nation. You're not permitted to drive. It's not the Autobahn. If you're in the Cherokee Nation and you're an Indian, you still have to follow the law. There were people saying that, well, now you just have all these wild Indians in Tulsa and no one can prosecute them. And in fact, both the Muskogee Nation and the Cherokee Nation and the Osage Nation, I'm sure, are cross-deputized with the city of Tulsa. So city of Tulsa officers can make arrests today there's no question about that. There's been no question about that. I mean, we had a cross-deputization agreement with the city of Tulsa prior to McGirt. So these are not new agreements. Everyone understands who works in law enforcement that they have the ability to make these arrests. So I think that there's just sort of a lot of hysteria being created, and that we just have to sort of push back with, sober facts. This is actually not the case. There are, in fact, laws that Indians have to obey on the reservation. Local law enforcement do have the capacity to enforce those laws. And if there are other issues that come up, and certainly it's possible that there might be, that they need to call and let us know so we can talk about it. All right, with that, I'll answer any questions that may come up.
Any questions, Daryl?
Hi, sir. How are you doing?
Doing great.
With the prison that we have down in Texas, when we sentence, let's say we sentence a Cherokee to 3 years, how much of that do they actually do?
So they'll do all 3 years.
Okay. Have we thought about enacting any type of good time, days off if they get their GED? It's a good method to use for behavior modification and keeping people in line. If you got a 3-year sentence, you can act a fool because you're doing 3 years, whether you're a good inmate or a bad inmate. That would be something I would suggest us looking into. I've had 2 people from that unit call me, and their parents reach out and say, hey, they're having to do day for day here,
Right.
Anyway, if you'd like to talk about it later or something, I'd love to visit with you on it and see if that's something we might be interested in doing.
Of course, Counselor. Thank you.
Doc?
Sir, could you just kind of summarize what we received, I guess, here a couple of weeks ago about the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court?
Sure.
How does that what are the mechanics of that and somewhat? And is all that done in Muskogee there? The juvenile trials and sentencing, is it still done at Muskogee?
Usually the court itself is held in Tahlequah. That the juvenile justice program grew so large so quickly as a result of McGirt that they ended up crowding out a lot of the space that the court would have really needed to continue to operate out of Muskogee. So they've been having court in Tahlequah for the juveniles, but the juvenile office is there. The Healing to Wellness Court is if you have a young person who, let's say you've caught them on a drug offense, and you've got someone who, maybe this is their first their first serious offense, or maybe it's not their first offense. Maybe they've had a series of serious offenses. But they indicate a willingness and a desire, and there's maybe a supportive family there saying, we have a willingness and a desire to seek treatment. We want to find a different way. The Healing to Wellness Court gives them an opportunity to engage with the family in really a big social work, more of a robust social work network. Focusing on drug treatment. It's basically, it gives you extra emphasis. It's a privilege for the juvenile. So if they don't play ball, if they don't participate, if they don't take it seriously, then that privilege can be revoked, and then they can be, put back on the path of something that's going to be more difficult for them, having to deal with, they may have to do some time in detention, or they may have other consequences for that. But for those young people who are really willing and able to dig in and try to find for themselves a different kind of life, it is an opportunity for them to find it. It is something that we have a grant to do, and it is a program that we operated previously, but that ended, I think, back in 2017 or 2018, I forget. But it has been reinvigorated in the last couple of years by the good folks over at Juvenile Justice, who actually report up to Shannon, not to me, so I'm assuming Shannon will jump up in a panther-like way and correct me if I misstate anything. But I believe that that's the general purpose of the Healing to Wellness Court, and that's their mission. And they've had good engagement already, and I think their biggest interest is in trying to grow that program even broader so they can take on more young people. But it requires a lot of resources and a lot of time, so you need more workers focused on that. So it's something that we'll have to grow as we have the resources and the ability to grow it. So I think it's a good program. It's a model that's used across the nation, both in juvenile and in adult. There are Healing to Wellness courts throughout the United States that operate. And so I think that this kind of court is something that we're hopeful that will create a good model, get really familiar with how to make it work correctly, and then we'll be able to maybe roll it out at an even larger scale. Because, of course, intervention and correcting the issue early and finding a way around people having to do detention, having future law enforcement problems, that's better and cheaper for everyone if you can find a way to get these folks back on track.
So is this offered no matter what the offense is?
It's not on every offense. There are certain offenses where it's not suitable or it's not appropriate. It has to be a circumstance, and they have. And I don't know what they use to determine what offenses that they'll look at, but I do know if there are some violent offenses and other offenses where it might not be appropriate to use Healing to Wellness. It's really focused on people who are drug offenders.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Speaker.
Councilwoman Coates.
Thank you. I've got one question about earlier, and then I want to follow up with questions that Councilor Legg and Councilor Dobbins have both. So the issue with the City of Tulsa, since we do have cross-deputization agreements with the city already, is really one about who collects the revenue from the fines. Is that fundamentally it?
Yeah, it's a question of jurisdiction, and from jurisdiction flows the ability to collect those fines.
Right.
And most of the municipalities, they have limited jurisdiction, so cities don't make arrests for felonies for the most part. They can make arrests, but they don't prosecute that in the city courts. Those would go to the county or to the nation. But the municipal courts typically handle traffic, and they'll handle, sometimes, I think there's a couple of courts that will handle DUIs. They can handle lower level offenses.
Right. So, and the Supreme Court, if this is appealed to them, they always have the option to not hear the appeal. Is that correct? And
absolutely, and they don't hear most petitions for cert that go up to them.
right. So basically, something about fines in a city they might not hopefully regard as having enough significance on a municipal matter, or
That's what we would hope. It was Oklahoma, under the previous Attorney General, made an argument that the Curtis Act was secondary, that Oklahoma primarily had jurisdiction because Oklahoma itself has jurisdiction over Indians on the reservation. And this is an argument that there are certain numbers of people in Oklahoma, an argument that they want to make. But they were an amicus. The City of Tulsa didn't make that argument, and this is noted in the opinion. The City of Tulsa didn't make that argument, and amicus can't make new arguments. They can only, inform the court about what they believe the law and the facts are that the court needs to know. So those issues weren't raised. I it was interesting to me, the broad language that Mayor Bynum used when he talked about appealing this law. He talked about civil jurisdiction. He talked about, it was a very broad language. He really was talking about McGirt more than he was talking about the Section 14 of the Curtis Act, which is what this case is fundamentally about. So I think there's reasons to be cautious that the city of Tulsa might decide they want to take this very broad argument.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm recalling, and I believe it's out of the Harjo case, the really famous and big case out of 1976 or something like that, that the judge in that case, in the language of the decision, actually said that the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act had basically nullified the Curtis Act anyway. In total, or is that just basically a section of the Curtis Act that the OIWA?
That was part of the Curtis Act, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that other sections weren't overruled by OIWA, but it means that the court only issues decisions as to the matters before it. And in that case, the question was about tribal courts. Do tribal courts, does the Curtis Act prevent the tribes from standing up tribal courts? And they said, no, OIWA it does overrule, it doesn't overrule them, but it changes the law on it sufficiently that it no longer applies. In this case, I don't think that was really, the argument didn't seem important, because whether it had been impliedly repealed or whether it was still in effect, it was the same difference, because it doesn't matter today. And the court kind of goes into the history of why that is, because one of the things in the Curtis Act cities, they were organized under Mansfield Digest in Arkansas, and they applied Arkansas law. And so the court said, that exercise of that authority was really tied up in this moment in history where they were exercising Arkansas, they were exercising federal authority but applying Arkansas law. And that period passed at statehood forever, and it untied, the bonds that created that authority in the city of Tulsa.
Okay. So I'm remembering the wrong case. It was the 1988 case, I think, that had to do with tribal courts.
It was that, and I think that's what
Yeah.
the case that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, thank you for that. I want to move on to, if I can for a moment, because I'm really interested in, there's a relationship to what Councilor Legg was asking about and what Councilor Dobbins was asking about, I think, in that when you and I spoke a couple of years ago about, making the contract for the facility in Texas and everything for our detainees, that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to recollect, I think my impression was that the Indian detainees there were going to be housed all together, more or less. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that was one thing that was really appealing to me, because as you know, and I think Councilor Legg shares this interest, I'm really interested in kind of restorative justice projects, which is what he is talking about would be part of something like that. And then what Councilor Dobbins is talking about is true. I used to be married to a man who was the director of the Navajo Nation's Corrections Project, and what he always told me, at least, that was for the general population in prisons, that probably 50-60% of them were under the influence of something at the time they committed their crime, and that for Indian inmates, however, it was more like 90% were under the influence of something. And so his contention was always that we're really not dealing with a problem of criminality, we're dealing with a problem of substance abuse here. And that and he had pretty good success, that if they could treat the issue as one of substance abuse, that the recidivism rates were really low for the people who had participated in those programs after they were released. And so I was wondering if we keep data of any kind about, because the wellness programs they do work best with drug offenders, right? But I was wondering if we keep any kind of data about how many people in the adult population of detainees were under the influence of something at the moment when they committed the crime that they've been convicted of, and if it might be of value to try and compile that type of information, because if we were to be able to implement some wellness programs with the adult detainees as well, and other kinds of educational programs and traditional cultural programming and some of the things that restorative justice programs do, that might be very, very good information to have and, to help us in understanding better, how to progress maybe along these lines. So that's just, I have a particular interest in this area, I think, as you know, and I'm really kind of excited by the fact that our detainees are all together because it presents us with sort of a laboratory almost, kind of some really, primo conditions, if you will, to begin to develop some of these kinds of programs, and especially as we are beginning to build our wellness programs, within the nation overall. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there, I guess, but I was wondering what kind of data we may have along those lines or other things that might feed into, some kind of cultural and educational programming for detainees.
Let me start by saying that those are good words, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate Councilor Legg and Councilor Dobbins. I appreciate the questions that you bring and the issues that you raise, because I think this is, we're entering a different phase now. I think we're getting much better at, and we do track a lot of information. One of the difficulties, at the time of the offense, most of our cases come from state officers. So I get what's in the report. That's what I get. And sometimes the report is excellent and thorough and provides lots of information, and sometimes it is less so. So the amount of information that we have is not absolutely consistent across the board. That being said, I have absolutely no doubt that it is true that mental health issues among the population of people that commit crimes is high, that substance abuse issues among that same population is high, and that those three things, that criminal behavior, the substance abuse, the mental health issues, that all three of those things are things that have to be addressed at the same time if you're going to try to address recidivism, which is the ultimate goal of any justice program would be to have fewer people in the justice program. So I think that those are. I think there's been a lot of great work done by both tribal programs and in the non-tribal world about how to do that effectively. And I think we need to be engaged in the thoughtful process of how to stand that up. So I'm in agreement with that, and I don't presume to think that we're going to, completely crack that nut. But we do have assets on our side. We have some things going for us that maybe the larger non-Indian community doesn't have, and we should use those things for the benefit of our people. Of course we should. Of course we should.
Councilman Callison.
Hey, G, back to the juvenile question that Doc brought up. Is this where Thunderbird would work into a program? I know that, being within my district and being in education as long as I have been and actually, working with the program some, I know I went to one of their meetings where it takes them approximately 4 weeks to get the caffeine and the sugar and the nicotine and everything out of their systems before they can actually start learning again. So, with the juvenile program, they've actually done the research that you're talking about with these things with our children. When we talk about these programs that we put them in, is this something that we look at putting them into, or?
First of all, if they can get you off caffeine and sugar in 4 weeks, I might, in fact, sign up myself. I think that sounds like an excellent program. I would be really surprised if our juvenile justice folks don't already have conversations with Thunderbird, just because I know from growing up in this general area that Thunderbird has been operating that program for a long time. And there may, in fact, be a number of young people for whom that would suit them great. That kind of structured environment would be really helpful to them. I don't know enough about, that would be a good question for Patty, the director of juvenile, but I would be surprised if she had never had a conversation with them, if there were not conversations going on with any of the. Now, one of the things that we run into, and I think Thunderbird is not state operated, so there are ones that we can probably work with, and there are some others that are not state operated that are probably ones that we can work with. Any of the ones that are state operated, we have had a difficult time getting them to to collaborate with us or cooperate with us in any manner. Not for our lack of wanting to do that, but because of the internal barriers that they face, I think, with dealing with Indian tribes. So, but I think, I can't see any reason why we couldn't work with Thunderbird, and again, I would be surprised if there hadn't been conversations.
Yeah, and the question would be, is there other organizations, when you mentioned group, getting the therapy and getting the families involved, is this basically what they're doing, would be with something like that, or?
Yeah, they use now, Cherokee Nation Behavioral Health is, they've got a strong waiting list all the time of folks that need access to services. And so I think they do contract with other entities that they can contract with to provide some of those services when they can. So I would assume it's a blended process of contractors that they work with. And also working with Cherokee Nation Behavioral Health when they have a person who is available and who's the right fit for that child. I wish I had more answers for you all. It's not my special area of expertise. Patty is probably someone who could be more helpful to you. Or I could maybe get you some more detailed answers in writing to some of these questions.
Yes, ma'am, because it would be good to know what percentage of Cherokee children that we have to deal with when it comes to this to try to help, and what do we do to help that situation, to stop it before it gets started too far down the road?
I do know that the number of children in the Healing to Wellness Court right now is relatively small because they've been, it really has sort of stood up over the last year, and they've been increasing the number of workers and the number of people that are involved. So I think it's a relatively small number of children who have been diverted into Healing to Wellness, but the idea is that the program will grow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Keith?
Miss AG, I want to say that this is my last meeting, I think. No,
come
we
back
have
to
one more
August.
regarding
One more.
this. But watching you as our Attorney General the last 4 years, you had a major surprises come after you took your oath of office. And I don't know that you would have said yes if you'd known all the challenges that were coming your direction. But I have got to give you great credit. You have handled this job wonderfully. You deserve great credit for the service you've done to the Cherokee Nation. And the fact that Chief appointed you and this council confirmed that shows the fact that we take very seriously putting the very best people in the place. I really, really appreciate the work you've done in the last 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's very kind. I've been glad that I've been here and able to do it.
Daryl?
Sir, I do got one more question about the UKB. They're only allowed to enforce laws on their 76 acres. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Like if they drive through Gore, they can't pull you over?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the only area where they have jurisdiction, even arguably, is the 76-acre tract that they have in trust, which is where their tribal headquarters is.
Okay.
And outside of that, they lack jurisdiction.
Okay. Where is the prison at now? Is it near Waco? Do y'all remember?
Did Shannon run away?
It's right south of Dallas, right?
I cannot remember exactly where it is. I'll have to get that back. I know it's not, I think it's like 5 hours from here.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly where it's at.
Speaker, I would like to suggest that maybe, if any of the council would be interested, maybe having a corrections committee form, and nothing where we all have to sit through stuff, but maybe where we could maybe come up with some ideas and pitch it, because I don't know if the private prison that we lease from, if their main goal is just, hey man, we're here babysitting, we can't do all this extra stuff. Do we, like we can have behavioral health specialists go down there and do an LSI test on them? Or it's not really a test, but it'll tell us if they were addicted at the time of the arrest. Or we can contract with maybe the local college and let their the kids that are doing their master's program come in there and work. I know Northwest Oklahoma does that through Alva. So they get to work on site at BJCC. But this is so new and it's going to grow so big. And, sorry, but
it is called the Department of Corrections. It's not called the Department of Punitive. You know, it's not there just to punish. And if these guys are all going to come home one day, you know, we can't just leave it in the hands of the coming home reentry program to say, okay, we got your clothes, we got your driver's license, I hope you make it. It starts the day they're there. Now, there ain't no Irish mob. There's not a Aryan Brotherhood. You know, I doubt if there's folks, Crips, Vice Lords. There's an element of this prison that is not subject to the same stuff that goes on in regular DOC programs. It's basically probably a lot of kinfolk. And man, if they could all work together to figure out what went wrong in their lives and their familyhood, and it's so generational. And I would like to be part of it. I would like to suggest stuff. I'd like to see if we could do anything, if we have the authority to, since we're contracted with a private prison. I don't know. I think that we could really do some great things coming out of this. And I'll do my time. Thank you.
I'll mention that Shannon appointed a director of corrections, and that's Suzanne, I think. She's the person who oversees that. And she would be the person who's got the best and most, I'm not the best person to ask some of these questions to, because it's just not my area that I deal with every day. But she should be able to do that. And I think if you were going to have a meeting like that, sitting down with Shannon and with Suzanne and saying, all right, let's, I do get updates from LaSalle, and I see photographs, of stuff that they're doing there at LaSalle. But I think if you have specific questions about, what are the programs that they have available and how can we get more aggressive about it, those would be good conversations to have with her, because I suspect she'd have a lot of those answers ready to go. And there may be, dry water, right. Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe we can have her start coming and giving us a report every once in a while, maybe every 3 months. And, I don't think we need to take over their business or nothing like that. I'm just saying, keep us informed of progress. Is there riots going on? Anything we can do as a body to help them do their job also would be great. Because this is going to explode, y'all. We may end up building our own prisons. Who knows what happens up here? With the McGirt stuff, this is going to grow when we're not allowed to incarcerate people in DOC anymore. I mean, this is a problem that all tribes are going to face in Oklahoma, and who knows what this is going to grow into. So
I'll be happy to talk to Shannon, and maybe we could start with her issuing a new section of the report that just deals directly. That'd be a place to start anyway, where you guys could say, okay, this is what's going on right now in corrections. And she could speak to some of these issues in the report. That'd be one way to start. Let that be a standing part of I'm just committing Shannon to a new section of his report.
That'd be good.
But that might be a way to start, that education process. And I can definitely talk to him about that. And if there's some issue with doing that, I'm sure that he will let me know.
thank you.
And we'll work it out some other way.
Anybody else?
Right here.
Dora?
Yes, AG, does the UKB have federal law enforcement authority or special law enforcement commission credentials?
So tribes do not get, I'm glad you asked this question, first of all, because I think that this is confusing to people. The UKB does not have authority, law enforcement authority to do that. Individual officers can be given a commission. So there is an individual officer at the UKB who does have an SLEC, who has a commission from the United States to enforce federal law on the 76-acre tract. So it does not say the UKB has jurisdiction to enforce federal law in the reservation. It does not say that the UKB has criminal authority over our reservation. It says that this particular officer has authority to make arrests for violations of federal law pursuant to that law enforcement commission on the 76-acre tract. That's what they received. And I've seen that sort of, I think, has been mischaracterized or sort of it's been conflated to say like, oh, well, now the UKB has federal law enforcement authority. That is not what happened. Commissions belong to officers. They have a single officer who has a cross commission, and it is limited to the 76 acres.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess a couple of comments. It doesn't surprise me on the Curtis Act. I'm glad it went our way, but, you know, I've listened to a lot of arguments from different agencies that I've been around that, hey, you know, we think the Curtis Act is still in effect, and why would you want to mess with something that's worked over 100 years? I hear those arguments all the time, but, you know, when we talk about the state of Oklahoma as opposed to us, the state of Oklahoma in those 100 years never did it by themselves. There is nobody in this state that can do any of this by themselves. The state of Oklahoma had counties and cities doing most of their work. They didn't do the work. They've got troopers, they've got drug enforcement guys, they have some they didn't, the state of Oklahoma has never done this on their own. So, you know, when we, of course, get this, McGirt happens, and we have to start doing, we're obviously going to need some help too, because even when the state said they were successful over 100 years, they didn't do it by themselves. That's a fact. So, you know, we shouldn't, it'd be difficult for us just to step into those shoes and do it by ourselves too, especially with the nuances of the law and different things like that. But when when I listen to you guys, I feel for what you're saying in a lot of these things, especially I truly believe that not everybody deserves to be in prison, and some people get sent that don't deserve it. But here's another aspect of us as opposed to the state, is that we are 3 years. So if something happens, let's say a manslaughter, somebody's intoxicated, kills somebody, if the feds don't want to take that and it comes back to us, what could have been 25 years given is now 3, unless we stack, unless there's several charges together. If there's 3 charges, it can be up to 9 years. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So if you're talking about crimes that carry up to 25 years in a state court or a federal court, and you get to ours and the maximum is 3. So, you know, everything has to be looked at as a case by case. You know, and I agree that, you know, that we need to look at what, you know, addiction and things like that really may be the contributing factor to these crimes. But whenever you get into some of these crimes where you have loss of life or loss of limb, whatever it is, violent crimes, home invasion, different things like that, kidnapping, or whatever it is that the feds don't take and we are very limited on how we can punish these people. I mean, very limited. So, like I said, what could be 25 years is 3 years for us. So, I look at your job as stepping into this is very difficult. Running a court for the first time. But I also think that we are going to have to find alternative ways to, I hate to say punish people, but maybe rehabilitate people as opposed to prison. But again, we are getting a big discrepancy on punishment from a state and us. And I think a lot of that is the animosity that comes from people saying, well, you know, we have one fine for this, for running a stop sign, and you guys have a different fine, and it's more. I mean, the Indian gets charged more than the non-Indian, or the non-Indian gets sentenced less. The Indian gets sentenced less than the non-Indian. I mean, there's a lot of different things that McGirt has brought to the table. So I think that, you know, this is just something that we are going to have to grow. We're going to have to learn from how we do things. You know, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that the agency's gripes is prosecution of things and non-prosecution of things, because they're used to everything being prosecuted, and we don't. I know we don't. So they're not used to that. So there's a lot of getting, you know, used to each other on both sides. And some of them just don't want to take because this is just how we've done it for the last however long we've done it. Well, it's not like that anymore. So, but I'll end with this. If any of your sheriffs or your city police say that, gosh, McGirt has been detrimental to us because we are so busy handling your stuff, your cases. Here's the deal, and this is the way it is. Nothing's freaking changed from today as of 10 years ago, because 10 years ago before McGirt, when you rolled up on a call, I don't care what color they were, what nationality they were, I don't care. You took care of it, and you sent it to court. Now, you're cross-deputized, you roll up on a call, I don't care who it is, you take care of it, and maybe instead of state court, you send it to the other court. Nothing has changed other than the court it goes to. So, all these arguments that McGirt brought this, and this, it didn't. That's just people being lazy and not wanting to do that job and pawning it off on us. So that doesn't fly. That argument absolutely does not fly. So, but I'm sorry for the long rant, but you have done an excellent job. I know this has been very difficult. There's been a lot of challenges, but you continue to protect our sovereignty. And, we appreciate you from all the different attacks from all over. You've done a good job, Sarah.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will say that if there's any DA's office that's filing every case that law enforcement sends them, they're doing a crap job. Because it's our job to make sure that those cases are worth filing, that they were properly investigated, and that there's sufficient evidence to make the case. And so when people say things like that, I'm always like, I know these DAs. They don't file everything they get from law enforcement. Nobody does. You have to, because we have obligations. That's what the difference job is between the police and the prosecutors. We have to be sure that when it gets filed, that it's worth filing. So I don't feel bad when we decline a case, because some cases need to be declined because they're not appropriate to be filed. And also, I'm a prosecutor at the end of the day. I don't feel bad when I ask for those 3-year sentences, because in our judgment, that's what the law requires in that case. And there are times when we do ask for the maximum sentence. We feel like it's appropriate and justified. So, everyone's got their role to play in this whole system. But the ultimate goal that we have, which is safer tribal communities and a safer reservation, that's everyone's goal, no matter what your particular job in the system is. All right.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? All right, good report.
Thank you.
FOIA GRA, Gwen Terrapin. Hey, Gwen.
Good morning, and it's good to see all of you. I hope you're enjoying your summer so far. Excuse me. Since I did the report, we've had one more FOIA come in, so we have 20, and 6 are outstanding, and no GRAs, and everything's been updated on the website.
Any questions for Gwen? Julia?
Okay. Is there a GRA form on the website? I wasn't finding one when I was looking a couple of weeks ago.
No, we don't put that on the website
Right.
since it's specifically for their tribal council.
Right.
I know that either Gail or Shelley may have one, or I'll be glad to send you one.
Okay. If you would, I'd appreciate that.
I will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, from the Election Commission, Marcus Fears.
Good morning.
Morning.
You have my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Marcus? Rex?
Yesterday evening in the Reasor's parking lot, a lady caught me. She was complaining about everything, but she was trying to convince me that her notary was good. I don't know why she wanted to convince me, because if her notary's good, there's no reason to try to convince someone.
Right.
But then I hear that it's my understanding that there's 92 ballots that's disputed. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so later today at 2 o'clock, we have a meeting to certify the vote count of the election, and we'll be able to discuss that after that meeting.
Okay, Candace?
Well, following up on Councilor Jordan's question, I have some curiosity as to why that notary may be seeking to reassure people about her status. Is it possible that there was some information that came to her from some source inside the Cherokee Nation Election Commission that let her know that notary might be in question?
I don't know the answer to that question. That I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because it's awfully curious that, she's seeking to reassure Counselor Jordan about her notary status. So what is the process for confirming that a notary public is valid when they are notarizing the absentee ballots?
So what was your question again? What is the process for?
Yeah, so when the absentee ballot comes in and it shows that a notary has notarized that ballot, what's the process for confirming that notary public has a valid commission?
Yeah, so there's a website. State of Oklahoma has a website, and we can look by commission number, we can look by name, and it will let you know if they are active, pending, or not.
Okay, and that's done for each one of the notary public commissions that shows up on the notarized ballots?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so in terms of recording the absentee ballots as they are being delivered to the Cherokee Nation Election Commission, is that a record that's kept there at the Election Commission? Who's delivering the absentee ballots?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So these ballots that are, this individual who is seeking to reassure Counselor Jordan about her notary public commission, if this individual did deliver those ballots, there's a record of that.
Yeah, the commission keeps record of who drops off. We'll have a clipboard if they're going to drop in our box or if they're going to drop off. We have a list of who's dropping it off and a list of who they're dropping off for.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Dora?
So are you able to speak to the nature of these 92 disputed absentee ballots at this point?
Not at this time. Like I said, we have a meeting today at 2 o'clock. The commission will discuss the vote count, and after that, we'll be able to clarify.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Well, after that, I think that something needs to be distributed to all of us to let us know what's going on.
Absolutely.
One other thing, I think that you try to make things easier for you guys. A lot of first-time voters, and we did a few this year, registered them, and they'd never voted before, ever. And, some are in their 50s and 60s and never have voted. Well, they got so excited when they got their stuff, they did it wrong. They didn't get it notarized, and they didn't count, and they were just so proud to have voted, but it didn't count. So, I don't know, maybe on that envelope, people don't, you know as well as I do that a lot of people will not read the fine print. It's not going to happen. It's there for you, and you should, but they don't. So maybe on that, one of the envelopes, you could have like maybe a picture of a stop sign and say, did you fill out your voter form? Was it put in secrecy envelope and sealed? Was secrecy envelope put in next envelope? And then at the bottom have a green stoplight. If you did all these and had it notarized, then this is good.
Yeah.
I mean, something that they can see, maybe like on an envelope, just to see that. If this is what you do to make this good, and then at the bottom have maybe a green light stop sign type deal.
Right.
Just maybe to make it easier for those who have never voted before. And I tell you that they were very, very, excited to vote. They've never been asked. But did you have something, Keith?
On the disputed ballots, I'm familiar with the term challenge ballots. Disputed ballots, not so much. Is this the same thing, or is it different?
No, it's different.
Okay, can you explain that difference?
So the challenged ballot's going to be if they filled out a challenged ballot. They're going to fill out a challenge ballot. If they come in during early walk-in or at the polls and say they requested an absentee and they decide not to vote their absentee, they're going to vote a challenge ballot. This would have been something that's not a challenge ballot.
So how does this dispute become known? Is it something that's discovered internally because you receive a ballot and there's a problem with the process?
Right.
Just help me understand that term better.
Yeah, so we'd receive a ballot going through the verification process and then do a verification online, and if questions arise, that's what happened. Do you want to add anything?
That's exactly what happened.
Yep.
Multiple, but these aren't, the issues that make it a disputed ballot could be multiple things? Or is it like all one type of thing?
It's all one issue.
You want
It's
to
all
clarify?
one issue on whether a notary is valid or not.
Okay. That takes it right to the point. Thank you.
Anybody else? Wes?
Just a quick comment. They're moving forward. Obviously, we know there was issues in the general election with ballot secrecy envelopes. There was actually ballots that were not allowed to be accepted, that now we talk about notaries and stuff, to where a person voted, received a letter from the commission saying that their vote didn't count because they didn't have it notarized, when in actuality they have all the documents laid out and photographed and time marked when they submitted it, and actually submitted it with a recording of the envelope mailed in, to where the notary was notarized properly. And then also it calls into question of these secrecy ballot envelopes not being so secret, considering that was there. And so just raising concerns about that moving forward with elections. Also, notaries, the commission's attorney has even stated they don't have to follow the Oklahoma regulations because we're a sovereign nation. So when it comes to the Oklahoma regulations and notaries and balloting of notaries, we've had cases that set precedents that the commission doesn't actually have to follow that. So I know those may be some of the questions that you're having internally with those decision-making process there. So that was just the comments that I wanted to have on it. So appreciate it, Chair.
Any comments on that?
Whenever it comes to, just speaking to rejection of absentee ballots, we actually photocopy both sides of the envelope, and it'll show if there was something not signed, there was not a seal, there was not a notary signature or something like that. We photocopy both of those and make those available to the voter. If anybody has any questions, any voter, they can always give us a call, and we'd be happy to talk to them about it.
Okay. Candace?
Back to these kind of, the notary commission and those 92 challenge ballots. If it does turn out that the notary public did not have a valid commission and these voters are disenfranchised by not being, their votes not being counted, that's a pretty serious thing. And, one of the things I think that Cherokee Nation wants to assure its citizens of is the right to vote. So if it does occur that this notary public has an invalid commission and costs these 92 voters their right to vote, what possible consequences are there for this notary public?
I'm not aware of any, if you want to speak to that.
We will refer what we find today to the Attorney General and to the Marshal Service. And that's the way the Act calls for it. If we find something that appears odd, inappropriate, or whatever, we will forward it to the Attorney General and the Marshal Service, as I said, for them to investigate.
Okay. I deeply appreciate that. I know that the Cherokee Nation Election Commission seeks to execute its duties in absolute observance of Cherokee Nation law and policy. And I appreciate the seriousness with which these allegations are being addressed by the Cherokee Nation Election Commission. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you.
Just had a quick follow-up. I know we keep bringing this back up. There's also been previous elections where notaries have actually been inactive that you guys have accepted. There's actually been previous elections to where council members who have used in processing notaries. And so when we talk about accusations of going against someone, I want to make sure that it's diligently done on the election commission, also the precedents that you guys have set in previous elections to continue in treating everybody equally that you've done this forth. So just wanted to make sure that was clear too. So appreciate it, Speaker.
Any response?
To my knowledge, we treat everyone the same at the Election Commission. I'm not aware of any situation that we haven't.
Anybody else? I'll just end saying that I agree. If there's been any improprieties, they have not been brought up. There's been no evidence brought forth. So I think I disagree with those statements because I haven't seen it. And as far as a notary goes, I don't know our election law well enough to know if there's what the process would be to go after somebody who said they were a notary and they weren't, or they let it expire. I don't know what that language is if there is a law against it, whether it has to be willful or knowingly. I don't know that specific language, how you could go after that person or how it lays that out of the burden of proof. So I think it does bear some, absolutely bears some investigation, but at the same time, these people did something, I would assume, in good faith. Because if I say that, I'm a notary and I'll notarize this for you, and you believe me, you do that in good faith. So I guess at the conclusion of this, we'll find out. So, and I have the confidence that you guys will get to the bottom of it. All right. Thank you, sir. From the Tax Commission, Sharon Swepston.
Good afternoon, I think, now. You do have my report on motor vehicle. We are, compared to last year, we're still down just a little over 2%. On revenue and taxation, we are up about 21% compared to last year. And most of that has to do with retail sales. And also the Stillwell office, you guys help us get the word out that that office is there. They're telling us that people still don't know it's there, so we're going to try to do some stuff to get the word out some more that it's there, but please promote that office. I mean, they're getting more, but there's a lot that comes up here and goes, oh, I didn't know you had an office at Stillwell. So help us get the word out, and I'll try to entertain any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Sharon? Sharon, I just want to tell you about a comment I've had from a couple of people who've been to the J office. They said that kind of place it's just an old building.
Yes.
And it's not really user-friendly. There's no room. I don't know, it may be something that we need to think about expanding to something newer that is even more not such an eyesore. So just if we can come up with the money somewhere.
Yeah.
So you know that, I'm sure. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, EO.
I just, on a good note, on the front page of the Sequoia County Times, our tag aide boss down there, I don't know if people tell them what a good job she's doing. Everything's on the front page of Sequoia County.
I didn't know that.
You might want to read
Look
that.
at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thanks, Sharon. Next, we have from Self-Governance, Shauna Miles. Are you here? Yes, you are.
Good afternoon. You all have my report in front of you, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Shauna? You're getting off lucky today, ma'am.
Again, yay.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Have a good day. Thank you, ma'am. Good report. Gaming Commission, Janice Purcell. And I thought I just saw her too. And here comes Gwen. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's skip over Janice and let's go to Samantha Hendricks. Hey, Samantha.
Hey, I knew I was going to be next. So, you have my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions related to my report. There are two things that since the reports were due a little earlier this time, I wanted to just share. I'll be quick because I know we're on the interest of time. Just a reminder of our open interviews. We're still continuing to do that with Tahlequah, which is every Tuesday between 2 and 4 p.m. We're seeing a good turnout, really enjoying seeing the applicants that come in to try to help us fill the positions. We are extending those open interviews to the outlining properties or outlining areas, to the clinics. We are going to be doing those on Wednesdays between 10 and 2. But because we have so many, we're going to be, targeting on certain areas. Veneta's going to be July the 12th. We have Muskogee, that will be July 19th, and then Sallisaw will be July 25th. Of course, we're still continuing with the rest of the clinics. It's just that's where we're planning on starting because I had the higher openings at the time. So you will see a little bit of an increase in our training numbers in our report, which is due to Train the Trainer, which is also with the health employees on mandated exceptional guest service training, which we're happy to see that. We track that. That's why you see some of the numbers go up. And then also the domestic violence training, which began last year in June. So now we're starting to see those renewals happen, so you'll see those numbers go up too. So just some exciting things that I know HR is not always exciting sometimes, but those things are kind of exciting to talk about. So I just wanted to share that information with you. So.
Anybody have any questions for Samantha? Johnny?
Hi, ma'am. Thanks for being here today. I just have one clarification. On your report on the first page where you say where you've hired year-to-date 540 personnel, and the next line says it's percentage of Cherokees hired, that's 86%, right? Or is that the number of 86?
That's
So that'd be
86
464 of them would be
That's
Cherokee.
percentage of hires of that particular month.
Okay.
So we're starting to see those numbers actually go up on the overall percentage. I
Yeah, that's a
believe it's-
great, that's a great number. So 464 of those basically of that 540 year-to-date is Cherokee.
That's correct,
That's awesome. I
yes.
just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Samantha,
Okay.
thank you. Good report.
Thank you.
Good job. Let's go back to Janice Purcell from the Gaming Commission. Hey, Janice. Does anybody have any questions for Janice?
We will have a meeting date change for August. It states that it's in Catoosa, but it actually will be in Tahlequah again.
Would you give that to Gail so she can disseminate that to the council?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no questions. Thank you. All right, that brings us up to old business, none pending. Under new business, Councilman Austin, would you take that, please?
This is an act called the Principal Chief William P. Mankiller Capital Park Act with the 2023 amendments, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay. And this needs to go tonight to full council. Any questions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Are there any announcements? Okay, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, August 31st at 1 p.m. I need one more. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned.